Welcome to the Suicide Monk, and I am your host. Today, we're thrilled to introduce Ben Higgins. For many of you, you know him from the podcast Almost Famous and Hope Still Wins, but also from The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. He is also the author of Alone in Plain Sight and co-founder of Generous Coffee. Generous Coffee is a company that is mission driven. It gives back all its proceeds to those in need around the world. They don't take any of the profits, they give them all back. It's a beautiful company, beautiful people. These guys, Tyler and Ben and Tyler, were both advocates in the saving of my life. And that's just the nature of who they are. That's the reason Generous Coffee is such a beautiful company. It was without hesitation, and through our interview you'll hear some of that and how that came about and what Ben really did for me and how he advocated for my life without even thinking about it. So if you want to enjoy a great cup of coffee and support a great company that is solid, go to www.generouscoffee.com and subscribe to their coffee every month. It's a great thing. You don't have to subscribe. You can get sample packs. You can get 5-pound bags. You can get 16-ounce and 12-ounce bags also, if they're still doing that. I believe they are. Great company. I love these guys. They've Tyler's been a good friend of mine, and Ben is now becoming a good friend of mine. And so just enjoy this. He is a wealth of knowledge and wisdom, and he's going to be a new father soon, and this has just been a treat for me, being on this side of it and getting to know more about who this man is and what he has done and represented in life and what he continues to do. I called him the other day, and he was in Honduras, checking out, how to help those people and teach them sustainable living. So, and that's part of what they do. And they go and they research the lands that they're getting their coffee from. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. They're just beautiful people. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. Welcome to the Suicide Monk. Enjoy this conversation. It's going to be great. And we'll see you on the good side. So I'd like to welcome you all to the Suicide Monk. And my guest and friend, Ben Higgins. Ben, you want to give us a little background on yourself? You've done quite a bit, man. You've written a book, 2 podcasts, and started a coffee company. And there's something else. I remember you saying something about going to Honduras, and
yeah,
that kind of inspired some things. But we'll talk about that. I'd love to talk about kind of your childhood, your upbringing, and then we'll go into some of those things that you started and how you got there. And then you have some really fantastic stories in your book about people and how they affected you, and kind of your walk with them. And you have a quote that I want to talk about at the end there that you have on your website. That's I believe it's "Come sit with me." And just it really struck me. So I want to talk about that a little bit too. But if you want to go ahead and give us some background on.
Excellent. Well, it's great to be here. I know how much effort and time you put into this, and so it's really fun to be able to sit here and see you do your work. Yes. So we're both have lived previous lives in Indiana. I'm from Warsaw, Indiana. I grew up in Warsaw, Indiana. I went to high school in Warsaw and then ended up going to Indiana University. So Indiana has a huge place in my heart, but now I do live in Denver, Colorado with my wife. It's so fun to hear you say I've done a lot. I feel like so many of my days now I spend feeling like I'm not doing enough. But if you kind of lay everything out, just like I think anybody's life would, you're like, hey, yeah, there's been some fun chapters of life or some fun things that have been built that I've gotten to be a part of. I have written a book, and it's called Alone in Plain Sight. Alone in Plain Sight is really a book about my story, along as you mentioned that we'll get into the story of many others. And the whole hope of the book is that somebody reads it, closes it, and says, hey, now I feel less alone.
Sure.
That was kind of the whole purpose. If nothing else, hopefully there's some other nuggets in there that somebody to take away. But the whole purpose was to try to speak to anybody that's struggling or just wondering, hey, am I alone in this world? And that they would close the book and say, I feel less alone. I spend most of my time now doing Generous Coffee. And so Generous Coffee is a coffee company that was built in 2017 by myself and a few others. And I have a great friend, Tyler Silvius, who's a mutual friend of ours, who co-owns it with me. He's an incredible dude. And so Generous Coffee is a coffee company, sells wholesale and retail coffee, and then we donate 100% of the profits to nonprofits. So the whole concept behind it is that if we can build a big enough business, we can make a massive impact in the lives of many just through the purchase of coffee. So if you're interested in drinking coffee, go out to generouscoffee.com and buy it. Also, there was a season of my life in my 20s. I was on The Bachelor. And so I was on national television for 2 years of my life. And then, that's still plays an impact in my life in many ways. It gives me the opportunity to write a book. Probably it gives me the opportunity to start a company because, there's great connections out there, including, as you mentioned, the podcast with iHeartRadio called Almost Famous. And so I'm hosting Almost Famous. We're going on 8.5 years of doing it. And it's been an incredible gift to me to be able to record, to talk, and then use all the other time in the week to work on Generous. Which is probably why I'm able to be a part of so many different things, is because iHeart doesn't take up a ton of time, but it puts in a lot of effort, and then we're done for the week.
Yeah. It's fantastic. Yeah, Generous has been a huge asset. Actually, you have been a huge asset to facilitating me staying alive, not taking my life, and providing an avenue to introductions and things like that, and just sponsoring me being able to come to Colorado and fight for my own. Your Generous Coffee was part of that, and your facilitation of meeting Kyle and in that Footy Bluefield Ranch and allowing me to be something, believing in me and doing something different. So that in and of itself, that have saved at least one life. If there's nothing else that you've ever done, you have saved one life, my friend.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Brenton, because Generous. Well, one, it's it's a faith calling from me originally, and from a few others who said, "Hey, you know what? Like maybe the traditional ways of working with people and talking about love and talking about a God above, is it maybe that's not working, and maybe it doesn't work for us. Maybe we don't see ourselves fitting into that kind of space. So what could we do? So maybe the traditional ways of getting involved and in some type of like ministry or higher calling wasn't really fitting our world. And so we started Generous because we were passionate about business, and we're passionate about caring for people. And we're especially passionate about caring for humans who, either feel like an outsider, or maybe the life has told them they're an outsider, etc. And it's hard with our team because we give money to these nonprofits, but we also don't then in return sometimes get to hear the impact and the stories from the money being given. And so there's kind of this disconnect. And so we struggling with this with kind of like employee morale for a long time. And what we came down to was if one life is bettered because of the existence of Generous, then it's all been worth it. Like that's how much value you want to put on human life and human experience, and understanding the pains and the troubles that humans go through, because it's real. So if one life is better because of it, then it's all been worth it. So I really appreciate you sharing that your life has been better through that, through that act and through this kind of ecosystem, because it's all worth it if you feel like, hey, I've gotten some benefit from this group. So it means a lot.
Man, my friend, they have more than my share of a new one.
Yeah,
for sure. Like,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you when I told you guys it wasn't worth it, that I wasn't worth it, you stuck with it, and you said yeah. So definitely Generous has, you and Tyler both have contributed to changing a man's life and giving me life for sure. So
It means a lot.
yeah, so that's yeah, kudos. Thanks for sticking with me. So yeah, let's talk about a little bit about how you grew up and the atmosphere. You kind of mentioned that growing up in that Indiana conservative Christian format, I guess maybe per se, because you don't necessarily fit the mold either. Being around you, talking with you, you in some ways tolerating me because and putting up with me. That's the way I would have seen it before. But we become friends over the course, and you're just a loving, accepting, very, very. I think you're a very underrated individual. Like until you are in your presence, like you can't really explain who you are because you bring this angelic nature and love and care for people that I don't generally see on the outside, in the outside world, and all the people I talk to on a regular basis. So, talk to me a little bit about your upbringing, your family.
Yeah. So again, you said all of it. So that was the world I grew up in was, small town Indiana, which I love and, have a lot of appreciation for. And, but with that comes a lot of other things. Like it is a bubble. A lot of people are the same. Thought processes are very similar. And there's beauty to that simplicity.
Sure.
There's comfort in that simplicity. But as I got older, I think the one thing that town did not do for me in that place was prepare me for the complexities and the diversity that exists most other places in the world, or at least the places I've now gone to. And so I felt very unprepared, at 22 years old. Like I'm entering into a world that I don't know I've ever seen before. I feel like I'm on a whole new planet. I don't know how um, to operate in a lot of levels, but we'll get into later in life too. Indiana was where I grew up. I'm an only child of two parents who are great parents, very loving, very caring, very much present in my life, wherever I needed them, or really even when I didn't need them, they were present. Which, is an interesting thing because I don't have, parental trauma that I can figure out. I've had a lot of struggles mentally, unemotionally, and when I kind of went through my when I was really struggling, I kept going back to, is there something in my life in an upbringing that I'm not remembering? Is there something my parents did that I can't think of? And there's not. I mean, they were great. And so flash forward a little bit, because I think I was an only child, I always felt like I only felt the love of my parents and the love of adults. And so when I went into the grade school system, it was the first time I'd really felt rejection, because not everybody's going to love you like your parents do. And not everybody's going to love you like their friends do. They're not all going to be wise. They're not all going to be caring. I always felt like I had all these friends, not really realizing until I went to elementary school, these friends also were like in their 40s at the time. They were my parents' age. They're all my friends were their friends, or at least I viewed them as friends. And it had, my big kind of awakening moment happened in grade school. I was in reading class. We had an amazing librarian. This should not take anything away from her. She was an awesome, awesome person. But she did partner reading. And so she left it up to the students to pick their partner. There's like 25 of us in the class, and I was the one that wasn't chosen. So everybody kind of picked their friend. And then I realized that I didn't have a friend close enough to me that wanted to spend the hour reading with me. It sounds, small, but what it did, it woke me up to this first time being like, maybe these people, like maybe I am the outsider.
Mm-hmm.
And that narrative of being the outsider, kind of being the kid looking through the window at the party he wasn't invited to, was a narrative that still plays out in my life today. Like it hasn't left me, but I remember when it first occurred to me, and then it's just kind of haunted me, this outsider mentality. You mentioned it. You said, I think you said underrated, which is a very nice thing to say. If I could live my whole life and people would be like, that's an underrated dude, that'd be great. But also, even when I heard that, my initial thought was like, yeah, because nobody gets me. Um, nobody really knows me. And maybe I think there's now some. I'm married, so I'm hoping she gets me a little bit better than most. But I've always lived my life being like, the closer you get to me, the less you're gonna like me. The closer you get to me, the less you'll want to be around me.
So I find that totally opposite.
Yeah,
The
it's
more that I
interesting.
give them, the more I'm drawn to them.
Yeah, and I mean, and like that's what I want, right? You want people to be
Right.
drawn to you. You want people to be curious about you. Um, I have just always lived in this world where I felt like I was the outsider. Um, like I'm not kidding, Britton, when I say that the Truman Show movie, like I still have nightmares about it. Like I still have nightmares about that. There's like an actual like diagnosis for people that have that fear of that, like everybody's in on something that you're not. And like that is a real deal in my life. It was crazy. I watched this movie not knowing what it was, and I left it like it trembling in fear because I was like, that's me. Everybody's in on something that I'm not. And that it still haunts me to this day, not the movie, but that feeling. And
Right.
it's something I have to battle, fight, work through constantly.
How do you do that? What do you think about?
There's been a few thing, a lot of therapy, a lot of therapy. I've gone, it's been seasons, right? I went through a season of addiction, to painkillers because it numbed a lot of that, anxiety. It numbed a lot of the emotions of it. Numbing wasn't working after a while. It was just numbing and hiding and making me really become a terrible human. I was on a wrath of just destruction in any relationship I'd ever been a part of. I was ruining my life in a very tangible way. I was also, hurting other people and probably adding trauma to their life. So I tried it with addiction. I think had one of the very few moments in my life. There's two that I can like really think through where I feel like I had an awakening with God, where I prayed to God, if you're there and if you're real, I need you to step in and save me because I'm not going to do it on my own. And I don't know where this goes. And I just prayed this prayer and I can't really explain it. And it sounds very Christianese. And I try to stay away from that kind of language and that kind of mentality. But I prayed this prayer and it was like the most earnest prayer I could pray. I didn't have a lot of other things to lean on.
Sure.
And God lifted a burden from me that day that has to be supernatural. I don't know how else to explain it based on how deep I was in this. And then, so I went through numbing, that didn't work. Went to therapy. That talk therapy helped. Don't think it fixed it. It helped. It wasn't until Britain I'm not healed. Like this isn't like not a thing anymore in my life. I'd
Sure.
say one of the ways I have dealt with it and that has worked the best is talking about it. So like actually not just like talk therapy, like talking about it publicly,
Right.
talking about it with people, releasing this like anxiety of, oh, people aren't going to like me for this insecurity I have or this, um, health issue I have, releasing it and saying, if they don't like me for that, like it's not really somebody that needs to be a part of my life. But talking about it and finding so many people who can relate. And that's been, I guess, more healing. Small things I do is a lot of meditation, a lot of contemplation, a lot of writing, and a lot of speaking into myself positive things. I know that I always thought that sounded so weak and corny.
That's
But
true, though.
yeah, but speaking to myself, like, no, I know who I am.
Yeah.
I know what I desire. I know who I want to be, and speaking those things into myself, especially when I start to get in the spiral of you're not enough, you're not doing enough. Look at all these people around you crushing in the world, and you're not. Look at all these people like they have so many friends and they're so beloved, and you're not. Like all those things, I start twisting that and just kind of countering it in like almost like a battle type way with opposite language.
That's awesome. Yeah, I
That
love that.
helps. I'm
Yeah. Um, I have a buddy. He's consistently challenged me since I met him in February. Uh, And even so, more so since recently, since I've had kind of a paradigm shift in my life, a few paradigm shifts in my life. Um, what story am I telling myself?
Mhm.
What story am I telling myself, and what story is that portraying to the world? And as I look back at like my interview with Software Underbelly, I'm like, I become an observer on like what story is that person trying to tell himself, and that has really helped me decipher my spiritual confidence
Mm.
and kind of settle down in that self-critical mindset of mine. That's
Mm.
helped me combat, especially the last 4 weeks since I did this journey and had these changes. It's really come to light. Cannot let those negative thoughts, these natural, normal thoughts that I found, like I just let them pass through,
Yeah.
and that's been huge for me.
Yeah. And, we say this, and I'm assuming this is true for you. And I think from like an outside, um, you're like, if it was only that easy, right? Like if it was
Right.
only that easy, but like it's not the only thing, but it's such a huge step because I would get in this victim mentality and start like rehearsing this. Oh, that negative language. And over time, I just thought, no, but it's true. Like it's just who I am. I'm just
Right.
that type. I am just that guy. Like you won't like me. You don't want to be around me. I'm not worthy of this. And so I started believing it after a while. Like it wasn't just negative language; it was the most consistent language. And I think changing the language and the words I was speaking over myself and the way I view myself, and like you said, letting those negative things pass through. My wife, when we first met, I had this ritual that I do. I turn off all the lights. I light a candle. I play this certain soundtrack that I have, and I let my thoughts, what I tell her, wash over me. So like anything on my mind, I just get quiet and I just like let all these thoughts wash over me. So I know where I'm at, because when the world's busy and moving and loud and crazy and there's responsibilities, I forget where I'm at. I don't even think about it. So I just get quiet for a little bit. And those negative thoughts, when they come up, I let them just go out, like come right through me. They don't stick. I don't
Yeah.
sit on them. They just go right in and right out. And it's been an incredible thing for me. Um, I think just in operating in my daily life, to know that I'm not living in those negative thoughts, that they're in and out as quick as they can be. And it's a good habit. It's a good practice.
Yes.
Um, it's been a good practice for me.
That's awesome. It's tough to do. It's tough to learn. It's tough
Yep.
to let go of that natural, normal response that you have towards yourself, and
Mm.
just let it be like, okay, it's here, but that's actually not a truth. So let it go. And then what is the truth? Well, the truth is I'm a good person. I'm this. I am that. I am
Mm.
not what the narrative of what I've always told myself or what somebody else has told me.
Yeah.
I am not that.
Yeah.
What is my natural, normal spirit? Where do I reside in the most beautiful part of who I am? That's that young spirit that you were kind of naturally born into this world with, and then things were chipped away at you as life came at.
And maybe said in like in almost a different way, like almost like a mystics type way, would be like, I don't want my life, no matter what part I'm in, no matter how old I've been, young, old, as I get older, I don't want my life to be associated with anything evil. And I think sin and like evilness has gotten this really like kind of black and white, weird like
Right.
definition recently,
Yeah.
or recently, probably for a long time. But in my life, it was very black and white. But I don't want my life to be associated with anything evil, because what I do believe to be true about the world is, when you're associated with something evil, like not only are you going to suffer yourself, but other people are going to suffer. And luckily, by God's grace, I've not become selfish enough where I'm like, yeah, I don't care if other people suffer because of my
Right.
existence.
Right.
Um, and so I don't want my life to be associated with anything evil. Those negative thoughts, one, are not true. They could be true in a moment, but they're not true consistently about myself. And so I want to battle that evil with something good. And so, like you said, like, who am I is the question I like to ask myself. Like, who am I if everything else is stripped away? what is left standing? And so when that evil, I'll call it evil because it gives it a name. When those evil things come into my life, like the negative talk, like the just the self-doubting, I want to battle it with the good because I think the good can win. And I've seen it in my life now over and over and over again where good has overtaken evil. And so it's a battle oftentimes where I'm like, no, I won't let this seep in at any level. I don't want to be associated with it. And for me, I'm not the smartest dude in the world, so I need to keep things simple. And so it's just that the battle of evil versus good. So when evil starts to slip into my heart, my mind about myself, I'll battle it with something good and battle it until it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. You had some, as you're speaking, I remember you telling me a story. I think you were on The Bachelorette. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you had some of those real heavy self-doubt. Maybe that was in the book.
It was in the book.
Okay.
We've probably talked about it. It was really kind of my moment, not knowing it was my moment. I was on, I got asked to be on The Bachelorette. I was in my 20s. I did it because I had nothing else going on in my life. Really. I mean, I had a job, but it wasn't a job I was very good at, nor was I like great at doing. And so, or really enjoyed doing. And so I got asked to be on The Bachelor. I went out there and I found myself even from night one, man. Like I was in the limo. So if you haven't watched a show, which I'm assuming a lot of people listening doesn't, you go on this reality television show. You start out in a limo with like 6 other people in the limo and you pull up to this mansion and the show starts. So you step out of the mansion and all of a sudden the show starts for the next 3 months of your life. So I get in the limo with all these guys heading to the mansion, and there's a professional athlete, there's a doctor, there's a fitness trainer, there's a model, there's all these, like, there's like 5 dudes in me is what I felt like. And I think honestly, and this is one of those moments I say is actually true. Like if you were like, one of these dudes does not belong. Like I honestly think it was me. Like I did not belong in that limo in terms of like career accomplishment, status, money, education, etc.
Sure.
But it was another one of those like reassuring, self-validating moments of, great, I come on this show, I take a risk, and right away I'm at the outsider again. Like right away I'm right back to where I know that what I know best is being the outsider. And I don't want to do this any longer. I'm exhausted from being the outsider. So flash forward a couple weeks, I find myself very quiet, very hesitant, kind of standing in the background, saying some things in the right moment, but staying very quiet most of the time, not really showing any side of myself. And one of the producers, who's a very wise man, a friend of mine to this day, somebody that, I don't know how he ended up being a producer on The Bachelor. Now he's doing horror movies, which fits him a little bit better because he's kind of one of those guys. He comes up to me and he pulls me aside and he goes, "Hey, Ben, I don't like you." I was like, "What do you mean you don't like me?" And he goes, "I don't like you because you don't let me get to know you." And then he explained, you say the right thing in the right moment, but you stay quiet when you feel uncomfortable and you just sit there. And so I was like, there's nothing you can say to me still to this day, probably other than like that could hurt me worse than "I don't like you." And so we sat in a room, he and I did, for the next 3 hours, and we talked through this. And I explained my life. I explained my insecurities. I explained how much I felt like an outsider. I explained how many times in my life I don't feel like I fit in, how, I don't know sometimes even how to navigate in this world because I feel so useless because everybody's in on something I'm not. So I feel like I'm on my own team. And finally, for the sake of the Bachelorette show, because it's all about love, I think he got the phrase that stuck. And it was when at the end of our conversation, I said, "Honestly, man, I just feel unlovable." I think what I actually meant was I felt unlikable. I don't know if I really felt unlovable. I felt unlikable. I felt like, again, the more people got to know me, the less they would like me. So I say this. And then he's like, "You should tell this to the lead of the show." And so I went out and said it to the lead of the show on national television. Long story short, I didn't think they would air it because I didn't think it was a pivotal moment for any reason, but they aired it. And the response was insane. Thousands of messages from people saying, "I feel the same way. Thanks for putting words to something I felt for so long. Thanks for saying this." This wasn't This wasn't even something that I knew anybody else dealt with, because when I was on my own little island, I thought I was on my own little island.
Right.
And so what happened in that moment for me was immediately, right away, I felt less alone because I thought and knew other people were dealing with the same thing. And so what I thought in my head was, well, if somebody else feels alone and I feel alone, by default, we're not alone because we share a pain. We share a conflict. We share this thing. And so I was connected into a whole community of people who felt like outsiders. And I still am to this day, with Generous and with some of the stuff I do, I'm still connected to people who feel like outsiders. But that, I think, was the reason then they asked me to be the Bachelor, because there was a relatability. I don't know, it was a wild. One of the moments I thought was the least significant to anybody else ended up being, I think, the moment that the audience said, that's a guy I can get behind because he's like me. He isn't rich. He isn't, he doesn't have a six pack. He doesn't have these crazy stories of travel and all this stuff. No, he's just a dude from Indiana who found himself on the show and he feels like an outsider. And that's a guy I want to see find love. And so that's kind of that story. And then it catapulted me then into this whole new career or passion or whatever you want to call it, where it has been about connecting people and trying to help people feel less alone who want to feel less alone.
Yeah, it's really it's an interesting journey as you're talking about it. I know that we've talked about this before, but it's fascinating to me every time. Huge lessons that you learn, because there had to be some fear in there when you went to be on national TV, and you go do that in the midst of feeling alone and having these experiences where it would push you into a seclusion or into a darker spot, but you go out in the limelight and just sort of
well, there was maybe even saying there's almost a spirit of giving up during that time too, where I was like, I have nothing to lose. Like, I've lost everything. Like, I have nothing going on. So why not? Let's throw stuff to the wind and see where it hits. It was a lot of fear, mostly fear afterwards, wondering, like, I guess I should say it this way. The only moment of fear was watching them show it on national television, because not everything gets shown.
Yeah, you're exposed.
And I was like, dang it. Like, once again, you set yourself up for criticism. You set yourself up to get pushed aside. Now everybody knows your weakness. They're going to take advantage of it. They're going to help themselves by it. And it was the complete opposite. I don't know why. I think maybe, this was 8 years ago. And so I think it was the start when people were starting to talk about the loneliness epidemic. And I think people were just like, I'm ready to break out of this because keeping it inside isn't helping me.
Yeah. You talked into the compassion of people because they feel it. And even today, after, 4 years after 2020, the epidemic, people still feel the loneliness. Loneliness, even to an exponential rate. Whatever happened then is still, we have residual effects of that. So we see our mental health, it's rising statistics, but I mean, I think most people have mental health issues. So
yeah, I would agree.
I mean, as you talk to people, it's like, I'm just they're struggling.
Everybody's struggling. Yeah, I think we could say that everybody's struggling. And maybe it's not a like a terminal, or maybe it's not a long haul struggle, but everybody, and like the one point I make in my book is everybody's experienced pain. Yeah. I haven't been convinced that everybody's experienced true joy. I think there's people I've met in my life who have always struggled to really feel joy and to sit in the joy. But I know everybody's experienced some sort of pain. And so that pain connects us. We don't all want to none of us want to be a victim. No, none of us want to have this victim mentality where we live in this pain and we let this pain just consume us. We want to have victory over that pain. We want to move forward the best we can and continue on, with life in the best way we know how. But we've all experienced that season. And so one of the ways to go about then overcoming the pain is the first step is to start getting with people, getting with communities. Why has AA been so successful? Why is it such a gift to this world? Because it brings this very non-judgmental place where we can all come together and be like, hey, we all got this problem, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So you and I, there's no judgment here. Just let's help each other out. Let's help, let's get help. And I think that's kind of what happened when I said I felt less alone. I think people were like, goodness, like maybe we just need to start talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And the more we can relate to each other on a certain level, the bigger the community can be. And it doesn't have to be a consistent momentum. I think it's, as I've done this podcasting, people tell their stories, those weights come off, even temporarily. Being able to release that tension that you carry around by telling the story, your version of your story right now, it's a huge thing for future growth. That's why talk therapy, they're putting down talk therapy right now from what I'm seeing advertised. It's like talk therapy is necessary to unload so you can reprocess and get, quit replaying that tape over and over. Like you were mentioning earlier, if I can get that on the table, then I can start to re-navigate and let those negative feelings just pass through and just kind of reroute.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're allowing a lot of that to happen, especially in my realm of things, where if you mention the word suicide, it's a 3-day lockdown and you're pumped full of pills and there's really no progress there. It's not, well, let's hear your story. Because if you listen to somebody's story that's in a detrimental mindset, they can release that. They can generally start to look to processing the problem and then navigating.
There's an interesting thing too, where this isn't a new concept. Like John writes about the dark night of the soul. That's a very relatable statement to me. The dark nights of the soul, talking about when you feel like everything around you is falling apart, when you feel isolated, when you feel alone. But there's this, and you mentioned it, you see in people's stories seasons where the burden gets lifted. And I think for me, still to this day, this is not something I'm speaking from a place of current experience. Sometimes it feels good to be in trouble, to be the victim. Sometimes you just crave, and sometimes you don't. I think for me, I don't believe I'm worthy of overcoming those burdens. And so I let them overcome me for way too long. But reading The Dark Night of the Soul has shown me there's a competition, which I love competition. There's a competition in overcoming. There's an excitement in working through. It might not happen. It could take years. It could take months. It could take weeks. It could take days. But rising up out of that is something that I think is crucial to the human experience. And when you become a victor over your victimness, when you become a victor and you can sit on top and be like, hey, I did it. I got through it. I didn't let that thing overcome me. I didn't let that thing crush me. There should be more of a celebration, at least that we have for ourselves, and an accomplishment and a spirit of I've done it. I've gotten through it. And here's the unique thing. So when you get to that place, and sometimes even when you're in the place of struggle, the question would always be, well, what for? What's the whole point of getting over it? Why wouldn't I just give in to it? And just say it's over? I think the overcoming of it, the exciting part is, by whatever means you want to call it. I call it God. Some would just call it life, or you call it, whatever you want. I'm cool with both. When you get over it, life brings you people who need you in that moment to not try to fix them, but to just sit with them and to relate with them. So when you go through these battles, or when you've overcome these battles, now you sit from a place of empathy, which was one of the greatest gifts ever emotionally. And you can just sit with people and be like, I get it. I'm here with you. Let me hear, let me ask the questions. Let me care for you in this moment. Because I've been there too. And for me, I don't talk to a lot of people about my deep internal conflicts unless I've known they've gone through it as well.
Sure.
Like because one, they don't know what they're talking about. How would they? They've never done it, no matter how much education. Two, they usually come from a place of trying to fix me. And I sure as hell I'm not trying to be fixed. I'm just trying to feel less alone or to get something off my chest. And so there's a beauty when you overcome it, because then you sit from a place that I think is an incredibly respectable place of being able to care well. And I don't think you would be able to care well unless you've gone through some of it yourself.
Absolutely. Well said, man. Well said. I love that. And you can only realize that I think from the position of experience of how important it is too. So let me ask you this: as you're saying, this has allowed you to have empathy and understanding and walk with people. How do you carry that weight, if at all, when you walk with them? Like even with me, for instance, how was that? Because I came at you from a very, very dark position of taking my life, and you took that in stride. Like it did not seem to break down any barriers for you as far as like confidence or love or any of that. It was like, okay, I'm here. Like, what can I do? And that was my experience. And that's where I was like, who the hell is this stuff? Like, how have why did I not see this before? So how do you now carry people who suffer? Because you've gone through some horrific experiences walking with people, and those are outlined in your book in some ways.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the book has 6 different people that have affected me at that time in a very real way, a way that changed my view of the world or changed how I operated in this world. They impacted me, I guess maybe is the simplest way to say it. And so their stories range from a young man I met at the Children's Hospital, literally living in a bubble in isolation before COVID was a thing because of an internal disease that's eating him from the inside out. And it always will. So how does he deal with that as a 13-year-old, knowing that his lifespan is short, that any day could bring an end? To a family of a young lady who was, diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, and she had a week and a half left to live when I got to talk to her. I met her through the ability to do a video for her because she was a fan of the show. And so I got to hear, knowing she knew that she had a week and a half because they had denied a 4th lung transplant. And so knowing that this was on the horizon, like at 26 years old, what does she want her life to mean and represent? Those 2 are, for the sake of this conversation, kind of the ones I'll stick on, but there's a few others in there, from a guy who's got paralyzed randomly to, an older couple who's married. So all these things, but your question's a good one. I don't know if I could answer it well. I think when you're asking it, my first thought was, how do I operate through that? Well, one, I see it as a gift, I guess, when somebody feels like they can share that kind of thing with me. So that is a gift. That is not something I take lightly. So there is a responsibility to that when somebody shares that. Sure. That responsibility, I think, also does weigh on me. But the other side of this is I trust humans to you were going to do what you were going to do. I could be a part of sitting beside you in that. I could be a part of saying I'm not giving up on that, but I'm not going to change your mind. Like I've never like in my life on purpose changed anybody's mind based on me telling you, hey, Britton, you should live. Hey, Britton, it's a sin to make the other choice. Hey, it's never convinced anybody of something different. Right. And so I guess what I carry the responsibility, but I also don't let myself carry the burden of I have to save Britton's life. I didn't save your life. I had really no part in saving your life. I just was like, okay, what can I do here with my lack of experience, lack of knowledge, really lack of knowing what to do to say, hey, Britton, here's some things I think, here's some people I know that could probably help you who've walked through this too, who have dealt with these things before. Again, somebody from a place of experience. Yes, you should just meet with them and see what they got going on. but then ultimately you're going to make the decision.
Right.
Others are going to make the decision. So that's more in that realm. If it comes to some of the injustices of the world, like poverty, lack of clean water, lack of infrastructure, lack of education, the lack of necessities that we operate in the world, what I do there is I say, okay, I have this responsibility now. The burden is heavy. I also have been given gifts by God to then go out and try to care for those people. And so instead of sitting on my couch and being like, it's too bad that person's, dying of starvation, I'm not thinking I'm going to change the world, man. But what I say is, if it's a ripple effect, if I could, again, if I go back to, if one life is better because of the life I lived, then it's all been worth it. That's the responsibility I hold.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
that's my motivation. Everything else is a benefit. And I think it's a life calling. I mean, I think that's maybe, not to go off on a soapbox here, it's where the church has failed miserably here in the last 40 years, really, is, when you read Jesus' story, he got in it with people. Like, there was not
Yeah.
this separation
Right.
of needs. This was I'm going to dive in. I'm going to get in the grit. I'm going to carry this responsibility. But you know what also I'm going to do? I'm going to still sit and have a glass of wine and dinner with friends. Like
Right.
that, this isn't gonna paralyze me with this responsibility. No, anybody that comes to my path, I want to try to care for.
Yeah.
But this burden is heavy, but the yoke is light. Like it's still going to be, I'm still going to operate in this world the best I know how. So I
Absolutely.
think that's how I do it. But there's days and there's moments. I remember when, you told me your story for the first time. I knew we both had a friendship in Tyler. You had told me he knew your story. Also, I called Tyler and I was like, hey man, what do I do with this? Like, who is this? Like, what is going on here?
He's like, I
Sometimes
don't
it
know.
takes, I don't know, call him again, figure it out. But it takes it takes a community to be like, hey, help me process what I'm feeling, what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Is this a crazy idea that, I'm going to bring up to him? Take it or leave it. But is it a crazy idea? And you just, I think the community aspect helps a lot too, getting other voices in with you. But I don't know.
Yeah. No, I like that. And I would have told you prior to 4 weeks ago that I filtered and carried Ethan's Springs. And
Mm,
what I found out is I feel responsible for it.
mm,
And then what I found out is it's not mine.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not mine to carry. It's mine to walk with. It's not mine to put on my back. It's mine to support. So it's become a lot lighter for me, and I do exactly what I do. Everything I possibly can within my realm of reason, knowledge, and just ability to help somebody, and the rest is up to them.
Yeah.
I've led several people to the water, get there. I'm
Yeah.
not ready yet. I'm
Mm-hmm.
comfortable. As much as I want to take my life, I'm comfortable in the misery
Mm-hmm.
and the suffering, and I get it because I've been there.
Yeah.
So it's not mine to changing. It's not mine to, but it's mine to again, like you, offer an opportunity to allow me to fight for my own life, or allow them to fight for their life.
Mm-hmm.
And and then it's not always fighting for your life, but to fight for, yeah, just to get away from the misery and deal with it differently, and try to enter into a narrow path or a narrow road of joy and happiness and love and acceptance, even in the midst of turmoil and suffering. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the beauty. I think that's, I get to suffer. I get to learn. I get to experience hardship and hard things. And now I get to learn how to navigate through it. As an adult man and somebody who's healing mentally, I get to be challenged by life instead of be stricken by it. And that is a huge difference for me.
That statement there, you said it so much better than I did. I get to be challenged by life now. Like, I think that's a massive mind shift switch for so many, and myself included. Because the other side of that would be, life has been so hard for me.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's not true. I believe that is true for many, most maybe. Life has been hard to you. I believe that. I don't want to take that away from you. but the mind shift switch of I get to be challenged by life. What is that forming? It's like the potter with the clay. Like what is getting made out of this? And it's the refining. And I don't, goodness, my prayer is not that I get challenged all the time or that life brings me all these hardships. I don't want that. But when it does, the shift to this is an opportunity for refinement, for growth, to become a better human, to care more for others, to relate more to others, is such an incredible just shift in how I think about it and how I think people could think about it. Is I get to be challenged by life.
Yeah.
What an incredible statement you made.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'm just observing what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I've become an observer of life, and I and that's the thing. I get to be part of somebody else's. I get to be part of somebody else's story. I get to witness what's happening in my own life, in my own thought process, because I know who I am. I
Yeah.
know what I've grown up with, and to hear myself talk now, or to be encouraging, or to give myself praise, and it not be egotistical, because we're especially in the church, it's don't be too proud of yourself, and don't build yourself up with ego. And it's like, well, my first question for people in the church is, do you think Christ likened to him?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he was, somebody said it, he wasn't burdened by his own self.
Mm.
I think is how it was put. Laugh at got but you get the general point. It's like, he wasn't bogged down by all his stuff.
Yeah.
That's why he was able to go out and love and be who he was and accept and not try to change everybody, but say, hey, I know what you're doing. I love you. You don't have to live like that. You don't have to.
I mean, one view could be that, Jesus himself said, I am. Like when somebody said, who are you? As I am. Like I am who you think, who you've dreamed of, who you've prayed for. Like that's a pretty positive view of self.
Right.
That is a statement that's not like, you know what, I'm just a lowly like traveler here. I've got you all shaken up. I faked you all out. No, it's I am. Like I am who you think I am. And I think that should show us how we should view ourselves. Like when we're feeling down and out, it's like, no, I am, I'm still human. I am still loyal. I am still caring. I'm still loving. Or maybe if it's not even an I am statement, it's like I desire to be.
Right.
Maybe I've really messed those things up. It's not like I can't be those again or I can't work towards those. It's I desire to be, which is still a very positive statement. And so I think you're right. And I don't know why. I think that some of the issues has come from society and culture telling us not to be too proud of ourselves. I'm not going to say that ego should ever be a thing we practice. However, I do think we need to start telling ourselves again, like we matter. If anything else, like I think we need to start telling ourselves we matter, and go from there.
Yeah. And there is value. Every person has a story. Again, well, I don't know if I said this to you, but what helped me was to know that what I realized several months ago starting this was everybody has a story, and everybody's story matters. That means everybody's important. And if somebody's angry with me, or they're whatever has happened, if it's just turmoil or discomfort, they're bleeding out in their own trauma, and they're bleeding out on me, and that's okay, because now I can stand there and say, that's not my trauma, and I can accept that, and I can again filter that out and let that flow through, because I don't have to be angry. I don't have to draw my sword. I don't have to, cut somebody's throat with my tongue. I don't have to, I don't have to. And I get to be this beautiful person. Am I going to fail once in a while? Yeah. Am I going to be angry once in a while? Yeah. But is it going to control me now? No, absolutely. I became a warrior. I became something stronger than I ever thought I could be, in this mind shift. And guess what? I'm actually really, really happy to feel it. I really like what I discovered and who I discovered. I really love And I don't know, I don't want to take that away. I've never loved Kool-Aid. For
Mm.
54 years, I've never loved myself. And now I'm supposed to feel bad because I do, and it's ego and all that. No, I really love, and I think I'm going to be an instrument for good things.
Mm.
And that's exactly what I want.
Well,
I
there's no
want
doubt there.
I
Yeah.
just want to be that observer that gets to be part of this beautiful thing called life. And I
Mm.
think in the midst of walking towards my dad, I found
Mm.
and you got to be an observer of that. And you may not want to take credit for that and helping facilitate saving my life that you did. And that's not building ego. That's just saying thank you. That was onions. And those things that you experienced allowed you to just sit there in the midst of this darkness with me,
Mm.
even though it could have affected your life in any way. It didn't. Now we're coming in result.
Yeah. I mean, if nothing else, look at what we're talking about now. Is you're saying I get to be an observer. I get to be a part of good things. Your story is going to, again, at least help one person.
Right.
All of those things are so many things to like celebrate. And I don't know what life looks like if you went down the other path. But what I do know is the opportunities that are in front of you now wouldn't be there. And
Right.
for me, that's exciting. Like I want to see what happens because I know that good things are to come, great things are to come, exciting things are to come, and sometimes those things are going to include a random human calling you up and being like, "Hey, I'm close to taking my life," and you're going to be able to sit there and be like, "Let me hear it. Like, what's going on? Like, I'm not going to try to change your mind. I don't do any good. I'm not any good at that." But let me sit with you in this. And that is exciting because that's going to change somebody's life.
I hope so. I
Yeah.
really do. So there's a lot based on that, on your website, when your bio, it says, come sit with me.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me. I love that statement.
Yeah. So, it's the website that was created really to share that I was speaking, to whoever, youth groups, high schools, conferences, etc. But when somebody, when the group asked, "Hey, are you interested in doing public speaking?" Similar to the book, I said, I don't know what I'd speak on. So the idea kind of came from the book. Okay, what I know I can speak on is loneliness and connection and community, kind of the desires, the needs for all. And they said, that's great. And so then through conversations, I was like, you know what this perfectly represents? Because I use that kind of picture of the kid looking through the window at the party he wasn't invited to so often. I was like, got to come up with something new. There's got to be another idea for this. And the other part of this was the idea of this kid walking into school for the first time, like going to a new school, and let's say the 7th grade, one of the most crucial times. And I use 7th grade because I think adults and children could both relate with this feeling. Being in school for the first time, or that first day of school, walking into the lunchroom, grabbing your tray, turning around, and knowing nobody, or not having any friends, feeling like an outsider, and walking, down the cafeteria, looking for for me, what I would have done is look for the one table that had nobody else sitting at it and just sit all alone because I didn't want to ask somebody if I could, come sit with them. And as you're walking through the middle of the cafeteria, all of a sudden you hear this voice of this student or this person who was in one of your classes that day, who knew your story and knew you were a new kid in school. And they yell out to you, "Hey, come sit with me." Knowing how much you needed it, how much you desired it, and just knowing how vulnerable that was in that moment, probably for that kid, because he probably had friends sitting around him. The friends probably didn't want to invite any new people in. They probably, you don't know this, you wouldn't know me at the time because I'm new. And the feeling that kid would have had, that 7th grade me or that 7th grade you or whoever had when they heard that voice say, "Hey, come sit with me." And so the whole idea is you could be somebody that either gets asked to come sit with somebody else because you need it, or at some points in your life, you're also going to be the person sitting at the table looking around for the outsider and going, "Hey, how about you come sit with me?" Maybe you're the person needing to receive it, or you're maybe because of your life experience, is the person giving that welcome or that greeting or that command, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think life brings us both seasons, as we've been talking about. And so that's
Sure.
why, that's where that statement comes from, is come sit with me.
Nice. So I didn't really understand, as I was researching you.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand that you did public speaking as well. That you get hired to do that. So tell me about that.
Yeah, not all the time. It's something I try to do about 8 times a year now.
Okay.
And it's usually unique groups. And it's groups either like HR groups at businesses, so like conferences for HR companies, or a lot of times it's for the youth. I think the message that I want to share is a message that would be most helpful earlier in life.
Gotcha.
So that come sit with me message, the message that, hey, especially right now with kids, that people feel alone. I wanted them to hear this early. And I mean, I don't know if this works anymore. Originally, Britain, the idea was, hey, I came from TV. So maybe it's a recognizable face telling them something, and I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to share my story. It's probably going to shock them a little bit. There's some shock and awe. And then I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Fame isn't fulfilling. It's not.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I've never met somebody, and I met some pretty famous people. I've never met anybody that said fame is fulfilling, money is fulfilling, accomplishments are fulfilling. I've never met that person. If they exist, I'd love to meet them, because I want to learn from them. But the message, because there was some recognizability back in the day, because kids in high school maybe watched The Bachelor.
Sure.
There was some legitimacy that was just handed to me, where I could step up on a stage and be like, here's my story. And hopefully maybe they would listen, because it wouldn't be some corny school assembly. It'd be like a real raw moment for them.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It is our youth that is suffering. That is also a future.
Yeah.
And suffering at an exponential rate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm in total agreement. It's great. That's beautiful. So are you not in Higgins?
I hope so. We're trying. We're in it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're on a good path. I'm 35. I can't wait much longer. Luckily, I married young, so my wife is 29. So we got some time. But I'm ready. I'm excited for it. It's life has kind of positioned itself to have me home more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pumped.
Yeah, you really like your wife, so that's cool.
Yeah, I do like her. She's pretty sweet.
Yeah, she's really nice. I like her. I've met her a couple times. Anything else, Ben? It's been a pleasure having you.
Oh, it's been great being here, man. I would say the only thing else would just be, I think this is such a incredible pursuit. And I want to say by you, but I also want to say just in general. Like, I think it's just a really healthy pursuit. And I think a lot of people, when I say a lot of people, I mean like 1 or 2 or 1,000 or 1,000,000. I don't know what that means, but are going to be benefited from it. And I think it's just an incredible platform to let people share their authentic story in a vulnerable way, knowing your story, knowing where you come from, knowing that there's no judgment, but there's a relatability. And it's the only intent is to help them and then help maybe somebody else that could listen. I think it could be the cure to a lot of our epidemics right now when mental health is just getting people to know they're not alone in their struggle. And I want to get behind anything doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. That's awesome. So I want you to go through some of these things. So you're on The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, the co-founder of Generous Coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You have a current podcast that is, hold on, it's somewhere. It's on iHeart.
Almost Famous.
Yeah, you got Almost Famous, but Hope Still Wins. That's what we didn't talk about. You got a podcast that was Hope Still Wins.
Yeah, you want to
talk to me a little bit about that real quick.
So the story of Hope Still Wins is it was similar to what you're doing here. So I wanted to bring people on that were recognizable So that was maybe the difference, because you're bringing people from all different walks of life. I wanted to bring people that it came off of the song Justin Bieber did called Lonely. And I was like, hey, it's true. Like, people are alone. And maybe if they heard Justin Bieber talk about his loneliness problem,
Sure.
or not problem, that sounds terrible, his loneliness thing, that that exists in his world, then maybe others will pay attention, or they'll listen a little bit.
Sure.
And so we started Hope Still Wins with the best of intentions, put a ton of work into it. And then we stopped it last year because people weren't listening. And so it's a great example, I think, to anybody out there that's like, sometimes you have great intentions. You know what you want to do with it. You believe in it, and it just doesn't work. And it's really tough. I didn't enjoy closing it down, but I did. And so the episodes are still out there. You can still listen to them, but we're no longer recording shows because nobody's listening.
Well, I listen.
Thank you.
I don't know if nobody listens.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's such a good platform.
Yeah.
Do you think that's something that you might revitalize at some
Oh, yeah.
point?
Yeah.
Okay.
The plan in my mind is to always revitalize it. That's never changed. I'm not giving up on the idea or saying, I'm not just pushing it under a rug. That idea exists in my head constantly. It's just now, I don't know if it's going to be through this type of medium. I don't know if it's going to be through podcast form. I don't know if it's going to be through a different form. I don't know even if it's going to include content. Like, I don't know yet. It could be a book.
Sure.
None of that has like actually secured in my mind yet. I needed to take a break because I was really sad and frustrated for a long time about it. So I just needed to kind of move on from it. But the idea of it is still there.
Yeah. I get that. That's good, man. That's awesome. You're glad to hear that. Because I think it's a beautiful opportunity for people. And to hear, because you're right, they do listen to celebrities and all, or they're going to get more attention to, because there's that foundation of fame or whatever in money or whatever. But there's also that content that they're just people, and they have life experience and they've gone through suffering, so they have something valuable to say. It's not just because of their platform or their positions. They actually have something that will touch them for it, because they're human, just like everybody else.
Yeah. No, they are. So yes, the answer is I hope it comes back. The idea is not dead. It's on pause.
Okay. And then iHeart is Almost Famous.
Yes.
And that is
pop culture. You want to hear who's dating who and why they're dating who? Listen to Almost Famous.
Perfect.
Yeah. Very different.
Yeah. That's about all I got, buddy. You got anything else? You got any last words of wisdom for people?
If there's coffee drinkers out there, go to generouscoffee.com.
Yes.
Buy some coffee. I would love it. We would love it. It would be awesome. And I just can't wait to continue to follow your story. And it's been great being here.
Well, yeah, and Generous has helped people like me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're not confined to just one thing. I mean, it's they care about people and they want to see people live and live life and live it to its fullest potential, because there's spiritual foundation behind you guys that says that's your heart. And I love that about you guys. And I've learned so much from both of you, the direction you're going and how much work you put. I've been behind the scenes. I've back the coffee. I've been at the roaster, and it's exponentially gotten far, far better over the last few years. And just the whole business and blowing up and it's starting to do some things. And so if you're a coffee drinker, Generous Coffee and come up.
That's right.
Ben Higgins, everybody, thank you very much for being on this listening. I appreciate this. Thank you, man. I love you.
Love you too,
tell
buddy.
your wife hi. I appreciate you. We'll catch you on the good side.
Sounds good. Let me know when you're rolling through Denver, all right, bud?
I will. Thank you. Appreciate you.